Hello, everybody. Welcome to Interpreting Tradition and happy Mother's Day for tomorrow in the United States. Today is the Saturday, the 13th of May, 2023, and tomorrow is Mother's Day in the United States. And let me show you, you see these beautiful flowers here? My daughter sent me those from the United States. I just put them there for you all to see. And we're going to Zoom tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to that very, very much. I thought that I would say just a few words, my thoughts about Mother's Day, parents and children, and a few other things, perhaps a few examples. And I'm going to tie it with the concept of human dignity. And to the young, to remind them that parents have feelings too, and parents are human beings. Sometimes we forget that. I have a friend who's going through a bad time because, well, she has been going through a bad time with one of her children. The other children are fine. They have a very good relationship, but with this particular one, he doesn't care. He doesn't call. He doesn't write. He doesn't do anything. The other children tell her that. Because she has asked them, what is wrong? Do you know of anything that I have said or I have done or didn't do or didn't say or whatever? And the other children say, no, don't worry about it. He's fine, but he's just like that with everybody. He doesn't answer anybody. We have to try a lot, many times to contact him and so on. So nothing to do with you specifically, so don't worry about it. But this has been going on for a long time, and the result is that she has a good relationship with her other children, but not with this particular one. And she's, for many years now, I'm talking about 10 or 15 years, you see that she's going through this calvary of saying, what have I done? What have I said? How can I remedy this? And she goes through these thoughts, okay, because she knows that when a child, one of your sons or daughters, doesn't have a relationship with you, that it's probably something that you have done yourself. At least we blame ourselves always, right? And perhaps it is, that's the case, because no child is born and grows up sort of not wanting to be with their parents. The normal way is to have a good relationship. So if the good relationship is not there, it's because something that you have done, and you feel that as a parent. She has been trying for a long time, and what she would really want is to sit down in all honesty and say, please tell me what is wrong, what is there at the bottom of your heart that, prevents you from having a loving relationship with me. Obviously, it's something that I've done, so if you tell me what it is, because I don't know, but if you tell me, perhaps I can give you not an excuse, but perhaps an explanation, perhaps something I did at the time, perhaps something I didn't do. And at least I can give you an explanation of what was happening at the time and why perhaps I said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, but I don't know. And this is the anguish of not knowing and wanting to do something about it to repair the relationship, because a parent, when a child goes off and ignores you completely, it has to be very, very painful, right? And you're constantly worrying about it. What is it? How can I remedy it? How can I put it right? And what I said was, look, you can only do it for so long. You can only go that far. you can only prostrate yourself on the ground for so long. You can only be on your knees for so long. You can only auto-flagellate yourself for so long. At one point, your own being, your own human dignity has to come and defend you in some way. You have to be able to stand up and because there is a fine line, between wanting to do the right thing but then falling into some kind of masochism in which you are on your knees for the rest of your life. This is why I want to bring human dignity here. Sometimes we have to accept that we bring up our children the best we can. Sometimes not. Of course, there are exceptions. If you didn't worry, if you didn't care for them, but those are, at the extremes. Most of us tried to do the best we could under the circumstances we were in, which was perhaps in many cases not very easy. So we made mistakes and then we think about them and we could have done this in a different way, but at that time, in those circumstances, that is the best that you could come up with. And if you are in a position to explain, perhaps they will understand and so on. But there is this fine line that you can only go so far, but then you have to protect yourself and respect your human dignity. I'm going to tell you about an example of what I mean by this preserving your autonomy. You remember during the last illness, in the last 3 years in 2020, what had happened? You remember how it all started? We were seeing all those videos of people collapsing and just dying right there and then, and we thought, oh my goodness. So the first lockdown, we knew that this was serious. We were watching the videos and our governments were saying what a terrible thing this was. And so the first lockdown came in, and at first it was to flatten the curve, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And we all obeyed, we all followed. I mean, how could we not? The government was telling us that this was serious. And of course, we believed it and we complied and so on. I remember I was teaching at the time, and so we had to, from then on, we had to teach online. I had to learn how to teach online. It was difficult and so on. But I followed all the rules like all of you, and I'm going to tell you I didn't actually take the medicament at the end. Let me tell you how it happened. I complied and obeyed like everybody else. As a matter of fact, in here in Oxford in England, with the university, they were beginning to do the research into the medicament, and they were asking for volunteers, and I volunteered, and I asked for the application form and so on, and I discussed it with my daughters. I said, I'm going to volunteer for this medicament, and I don't want to say the word because the social media is still very sensitive about the words and so on. Okay, so they said, Mommy, don't. They were really upset, but why not? I thought, I'm in my 70s. It's better if they try it on me than on a 20-year-old, really, So I thought, yes, I'll do it. And they said, no, please don't. And they were really upset. So I decided not to volunteer at the end, only because of my daughters, because I didn't want to upset them. And I certainly didn't want to do it behind their backs and lie to them. So I didn't take it. But anyway, I followed all the rules. But after a little while, I thought that something was off. something was fishy that didn't quite make sense to me. When I began to see the whole media, everybody saying the same thing over and over and over again, and then it was not 2 weeks, then it was a month, then it was more, then the restrictions were greater and greater, and people were arrested in the park. And here in England they were talking about if you were walking in the park or something, there could be a fine of £10,000. That's almost $11,000. And things began to develop in such a way that I thought there is something else going on here. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. I didn't know one thing from another, but something told me that something was not quite right. And, I would have to, if I wanted to go into great details, I could speak about this for an hour, but, I'm just sort of summarizing things. And anyway, I decided, I had made the appointment to go and take it, but then I decided against it. Again, it's a long story, but that was my decision at the time, and I don't regret it. Those of you who were not on this side of the fence where I was, you might not be fully aware of how we were treated. They were trying very hard to, you remember the Green Pass is called in Europe, or the passport and so on, that they were trying to implement. And they couldn't do it at the end because there were so many people saying no to this, and it wouldn't have worked. But you remember all the restrictions, flying, I won't go into that, but just to remind you that there was a point when they were trying to implement this passport thing. They went into this mode of blaming the people who hadn't complied for the for making it worse and so on, and at that point, it was for quite a few months, actually. I remember, for example, President Macron of France saying explicitly and openly to the cameras, yes, I'm going to make your life impossible. And so other people were saying, well, let them die in their houses. I mean, it was quite astonishing, really, to hear. Jacinta Ardern very clearly saying, yes, they'll have to... But I was surprised that the philosopher, the political philosopher, Noam Chomsky, who was the darling of the left since the 60s, and he actually wrote books and books about, how the media manipulates you, this and that, all that. What is it? Creating Consent, and I don't remember quite the title of one of his books. But he was there, very old by now, saying that these people like me, should just be locked up in their homes and not allowed to go out at all. And that was it. No exceptions, no nothing. And when he said no exceptions, I saw the interview. The interviewer said, well, some exceptions, perhaps because obviously they have to go and buy food, at least in the supermarket. And I said, no, they don't want to comply. Let them be without food. Let them starve. And if they died, they died. It's their fault, and so on. So we were listening to all this all the time, every day. And let me read to you, because I just went and found it, because I remember reading this quite a few months ago, perhaps even a year ago, when everyone was still saying that we were killing people and it was our fault that the thing was spreading and so on. In the midst of all this, there was a politician. There were many people who started. There had always been scientists who wanted to say, well, no, this is excessive and so on, but they were put down on the media. They were not really allowed to speak. And in the midst of this politician, he's a lawyer from the Grenadines, as a matter of fact. Let me just read it to you, what he said. In the middle of it all, he says, he changed his mind. He had been very much against us, but then he changed his mind. He says, I am sorry I didn't listen to you sooner. I'm reading now. He says, those who didn't comply, they are the heroes of the last 2 years. They carry many battle scars and injuries, as they are the people who have tried to mentally break. We have tried to mentally break. Yet no one wants to talk about what we did to them and what they forced the science to unveil. We said they had not done the right thing for the greater good. Many of the health experts and political leaders admit that the goal was to make life almost unlivable for them, which was multiplied many times by the collective mob, who was the first, the fight taking into workplaces, friendships, gatherings, family gatherings, and so on. They were not admitted. Today, the hard truth is that none of it was justified, as we took a quick slide from righteousness to absolute cruelty. We might blame our leaders for the push, but each individual within society must be held accountable for stepping into the well-laid trap. We took pleasure in scapegoating them because having someone to blame and to burn at the stake felt good. We believed we had logic, love, and truth on our side, so it was very easy to wish death upon them. Those of us who mocked and ridiculed the non-compliant did it because we were embarrassed by their courage and principles and didn't think they would make it through unbroken. And we turned them into punching bags. We should all try to find some inner gratitude. He goes on. Let me see. Some inner gratitude for them, as we took the bait by hating them, because their perseverance and courage, what they brought us. It is the time to admit we were wrong. The war on them was lost, and we should all be thankful for that. Again, this question of embarrassment. Think about it. Is it? It could be that many people, looking back, I'm not blaming anybody. This is not about that. I'm just saying that there is still a reaction against admitting that perhaps things had been taken too far, and there are people who don't want to hear it yet. They don't want to admit that they might be wrong. And then we have to look into our conscience and think whether this is an embarrassment, the reason for it, that we don't want to apologize in a very general way, but it's to admit that they might have been right, or that at least they had a point in what they wanted to say, but they were not allowed to say. That the reason why we don't want to hear it anymore. We want to just forget it all and move on. It's because of a certain embarrassment that you were not able to stand up for yourself, and it was just easier to follow the crowd. Let me show you. I will probably put a link down below to that video of Tucker Carlson at the Heritage Foundation. You've all seen it, I'm sure. But perhaps young people haven't. And abroad, of course, he's well known in America. Abroad, in England, he's also known. Not as well, but not for most people, by most people, but he is well known. But perhaps in other countries he is not. I don't know. But of course he has been sacked, fired, let go. And in his last speech before he was fired, he was addressing this point of human dignity and human autonomy, and those who stand up to the crowd. It's easier to see an authoritarian person telling you what to do and you saying, no, who are you to tell me what to do? But it's very, very difficult to go against the whole crowd, the majority of the population. And he says he was guilty of that, he admits, and he mentions the Iraq War 20 years ago, when he was very much for the war and against those who were protesting against it. And he said, I was really cruel with some of them. I would mock and ridicule them. And he says, now I'm really sorry. I'm really embarrassed about it. I'm upset about it. And so he was talking about this, and he says at one point, he says, when people, for example, to go with the crowd now, especially the young people, put in your pronouns, in your email and so on, that there is always one person that says, no, sorry, no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to fight, but it's a betrayal of what I think to be true. It's a betrayal of my conscience, of my faith, of my sense of myself, of my dignity as a human being, of my autonomy. I am not a slave. Anyway, I'll put the link below for that. So, on human dignity, I think the best way to discuss this is just say, really follow your conscience, your well-informed conscience. Your conscience will tell you, for the most part, what is true and what is not. And there always comes a time when compromise is no longer possible, when you have to stand up and be counted and suffer the consequences. But not to give in or give up or just follow just because the majority of people are doing that. Just go inside yourself and ask yourself, is this the right thing to do or to avoid? So to my friend, that is what I said. Stand up now. You did the best that you could, and at this point now, what you have to do is to say, I am here. Whenever you want me, I will be there for you. Even if you don't want me, I will be there for you. But it might be, consider the fact that it might not be you who is at fault. We parents always think naturally, because most of the time it is, well, not most of the time, but that it is our fault. But consider the possibility that it is not. And it is something to do with your son or daughter or whatever personality, that the problem lies there, not with you. So at one point, stand up and defend your human dignity. Take it, digest it, that he may not contact you at all. You're there for him, for her, but be at peace with yourself. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, and happy Mother's Day to all of you. Bye-bye.